This is a video to help you Gen 4 Glock owners out who may be having a problem with your firearm. This video is Gen 4 Glock issues and how to resolve them. There's a number of problems that some people are having with their Gen 4s. The foremost problem people are having right now are failures to eject. Now, failures to eject are a serious problem that can be very detrimental to you if you're in a life or death situation. So we'll address those. The second issue that a lot of people are having is the Gen 4 tends to have a lot tougher, heavier, grindier trigger. So we'll address that as well. Let's start off with the failures to eject. Failures to eject can include, things like stovepiping and issues to where the spent casing isn't ejecting effectually out of the action of your firearm. So that's what we mean by failures to eject. Now, there are a number of issues that can cause failure to eject. The first one I'd like to address today is user error. That one is something we call limp wristing very frequently in the firearms world. Now, limp wristing is an issue where you've got your gun. I'm a southpaw, by the way, if you haven't noticed. It might look weird how I'm holding it, right? But limp wristing is an issue, and just so as you can see, there's no round in the chamber and no magazine in the magwell. Limp wristing is when you just shoot and you got a real sloppy wrist, and there's not enough resistance against the slide, so the whole gun's wanting to move back instead of just the slide. That's what causes limp wristing. Now, if you have a really limp wrist, it's going to cause the slide to move back slower, and that will cause your casing to not positively eject out of the action. Essentially, that's a major cause. So before you start blaming it on the gun, make sure that when you grab your gun, you got a great grip on there, nice firm grip, and you're shooting it, with, you don't want to just be so hard that you're shaking, but you want to hold it nice and firm. If you're doing that, then you can rule out limp wristing. Okay. The second issue we'll be going over today, and is mostly what I consider to be the foremost issue with the Gen 4 Glock failures to eject, is the fact that they came up with a new recoil spring assembly. Now, this is the recoil spring assembly right here. Okay, they put that in the new Gen 4s. That wasn't in the Gen 3 Glocks. They had a different type of recoil spring assembly. So Glock is an amazing manufacturer. They realized that a lot of people are having issues with this. Now, some people say that it was because they designed it for NATO ammunition or for law enforcement ammunition, which is much more powerful and cycles perfect with that. Well, that's great, but for those of us who can't afford to shoot a dollar around, it's a bit of an issue. Practice ammunition is definitely cheaper, has a lot less charge or a lot less pressure, which causes this to have failures to eject. Now, the cool thing that Glock did is you can contact Glock. I went ahead and called him. They sent me this. Okay, nice little package. Now, it includes a new recoil spring assembly, and it includes a packing slip to send your old recoil spring assembly back to them so they can get all those cruddy ones off the market. Now, the main difference between the two recoil spring assemblies, and you might not be able to see it, I'll try and include a close-up, is this new one has a steel lip on the end of it, where this one just goes from spring to plastic, and that's it. So that spring's riding against that plastic there. That's the only real difference that I could find. When I plugged the new one in, I couldn't really tell the difference personally between them, but I handed the new one to my wife, and I mixed them up and had her try it a few different times, and she couldn't hardly chamber, or I guess she couldn't hardly pull back the slide on the old one. She could pull back the slide on the new recoil spring a little bit better. I did put them up against a scale to try and measure these to see what the difference was in weight, and I don't think I was effectively able to do that, so I won't really tell you how that went. So all you got to do to get this is call Glock, give them a call, look up their phone number. I might annotate it on the video here. Call them up and let them know that you're having some issues, and they'll ask you what your serial number is on your gun and if it qualifies for a new recoil spring. So they're really awesome in taking care of that for you. The next thing that could be causing the failures to eject is a little bit of extra friction that wasn't there before. Okay, let me see if I can point this out with my knife. Kind of hard to see here. On the Glock, they've got this new indent on the trigger bar. You might be able to see it better from this side. I'll try and add a zoomed up video or picture of what that looks like. Now that bead on the trigger bar right here is riding up against the inside of this slide right here. Rides up right against that. And what that does is that bead causes that trigger bar to poke out a little bit more so it can indent this plunger right in the center. If you look at the Gen 3s, there's no bead on that trigger bar, so it doesn't ride directly in the center of the plunger. It's maybe over to a third of the way through. That's the difference. Now, that bead rides up against the side of here, causes some extra friction, causes some grindiness, some roughness in the trigger pull. So when you pull that trigger, you'll feel, oh, that's a lot heavier and grindier than it used to be in my Gen 3. That's what's causing it, okay? So what I did with mine is I just fouled mine off. Now, I'm not gonna go out there and tell you guys that's what you should do because that's your gun, and that's gonna mess with the warranty on your firearm. Okay, so do that at your own risk. I'm not gonna advise you to necessarily do that yourselves. That's what I did with my firearm. Feels just like a Gen 3 now, and I have to say that I like the trigger pull significantly more. So that is going to be something that could potentially cause a little bit more friction on the slide, make it a little bit harder for that slide to come backwards, right? Aside from that, it's causing that grindy trigger. Those are things that I've found have really helped me out. I went ahead, shot the gun with the new recoil spring assembly in it. It shot perfectly. I've shot around, I think, just a little bit more than 200 rounds through it without a single failure to eject. Whereas before, I had some major problems with some failures to eject, which was distressing because I'm actually a firearms instructor, and it was pretty embarrassing to have that happen amongst your people who are attending your course, especially when you're trying to get them to buy a Glock, because they are phenomenal firearms. I think maybe they released that recoil spring assembly, this one here, without doing as much research and development as they probably should have. However, Glock has done a phenomenal job in coming out with a new one. If you need to get yours, again, go to Glock.com, look up the phone number there, and give Glock a call. They'll be able to take care of you if your firearm qualifies for a new recoil spring assembly. They will send that to you free of charge, and if you can, just return that old one just to get that old one off the market, so it's not causing problems for anybody else. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Have fun shooting.